Hey everyone, welcome. Psych C85, History of Psychology, the most fascinating course you could possibly have chosen to take. Maybe, maybe not, depends how much you love history, but we're going to try to make it fun and we're going to try to make it interesting nonetheless. And, I have to say, this is now the third time I've taught the course. And by the way, hello, I'm Professor Steve Jordans. And yeah, this is the third time I've taught this course. Every time I've learned a little bit something more, and I've been really glad that I did teach this course because I really feel like I now understand that the psychology we all know is just the psychology as it is now. And when you take the history of psychology course, you see that this is just a moment in time of something that's constantly moving and changing. And so the psychology of tomorrow will be different as well. As things like big data and AI start to have an impact, it's going to change the way we study ourselves. And so that's sort of what this course is about, the big picture, kind of giving you a sense of psychology from pre-birth. What were the things that kind of led to humans starting to kind of turn the scientific method on themselves? And as they did start to do that, how did they do that, and how did their approach change over time? How did we become the science of psychology that we are today? And along the way, of course, we're going to talk about the various fields and branches of psychology that came to be, and when they came to be, and what they emerged from. And you'll really leave this course, I think, getting a sense of how interconnected all these areas of psychology are. And I hope you'll leave thinking that the story of all of this is an interesting story that you're glad that you now know. Okay, the course itself, what I'm going to do today is let's go to Quercus here. This is my Quercus page. Yours will look a little different. You'll see your courses here. This is C85. So when you see that, click into that. Now, I'm going to be straight up honest with you. I'm still doing a bit of work on this course. This is Friday. This is launch day. I have everything you need up here now, but I'm going to continue to populate early next week, especially Tuesday and Wednesday, with some more content, and I'll let you know when I do that. But what we're going to do today is mostly go through the syllabus. But before I do that, let me just kind of lay out that given I've given lectures on this before, I recorded this last summer while we were in the middle of all this. I taught this course as well. And okay, so for example, I'm probably going to have to change a lot of these dates. I will do that. Don't worry about the dates for now. But get the sense that what we've done here is I've got a set of modules, and really the whole course is up right now. And for every set of modules, you have the lecture, and you can just launch one of these. So let me give you a sense. You're going to see a different me than me. This would be me from the past. When I build them out in me sitting in a very dark room, looking very creepy. Okay, sorry. That's what you get. I was in a dark room at that time. But you can watch the lectures in that way. They're all there and linked to them, and you can get the PowerPoints. And so as you go through, you get a sense. Again, I have to correct these dates, but you get the sense of us going through this sort of week by week. And this will be the first one you should start working through. By the way, the textbook is this. And I'll talk about that in the as we go through the syllabus as well. You can get a hard copy. You can also get a digital copy online. We'll lay all that out for you. But yeah, this is really the course, and there's 16 chapters in that. And so what you see is that, a lot of weeks we're going to cover a couple of chapters, chapter 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 here, and then somewhere around here, we'll probably have the midterm, either before we do chapter 8 or after we do chapter 8. And yeah, it'll depend on when reading week is. We'll figure that those are the things I gotta nail down. Okay, so early next week, all the dates of everything will be really well specified. But all the content is there. You get the general idea, and that is the whole course, right up till here, chapter 16. Now notice this is 11 modules. You won't see this final exam stuff. I'm going to populate that as we get closer. But yeah, 11 modules. Technically there's 12 weeks. So you really have a week to kind of I don't know, fall behind, and as long as you get caught up again by the midterm or by the final, you're okay. So certainly by the final, we have a little bit of extra time there. This just seemed like a logical way to kind of cut up the textbook and talk about these various bits. And what you see is for each of these weeks, you have anywhere from 3 to 6, I think, lectures from me, up 5 or 6. Depends on how long the lectures turn out to be. So it could be 6 shorter ones or 3 longer ones. But this is me kind of going through the textbook with you, okay? So you can start jumping in on that anytime you want. You can start watching lectures, you can start reading the textbook, off you go. For this video, I want to give you a sense of the syllabus as our first step. And so you can just click on the syllabus and see it there. And yeah, let's just go through this together. Can I blow this up a little bit here? Yeah, okay, so let's go through it. All right, so yes, I am Steve Jordan's office. This is my office now. And I'm afraid you can't come over. But yeah, I am here at home, so I'm not on campus, and I doubt that I will be all summer. So we're going to have to do anything virtually, of course. Here's my email if you have any questions with respect to the course, etc. You've got my email there. Let me stress this: office hours, Mondays from 3 until 4 p.m. And I will set those all up through Collaborate. So I still have to do that. But I will set up the 12 weeks of office hours there. And you can click on Collaborate and just join the session at around 3 to 4. And let me just be really clear. My office hours, I think, are a little different from some other office hours. You don't have to have a specific question in mind. You can just come and drop in. Check it out. You can lurk if you want. You don't even have to open your mouth. You don't have to turn on your camera. I'm going to recommend you do. I'm actually going to recommend that you see office hours as part of what you're paying for this course, and that it's an opportunity to engage in professional interactions, professional communications with your colleagues and with me. And so I would really recommend, so much of what we do is online now. This is your opportunity to start to develop your professional persona. The you that you want to be in sort of career contexts and more professional contexts. And so I would recommend, show up at office hours, turn on your camera, show who you are. If that means you have to take a shower, do whatever you got to do. But yeah, come there, interact with each other, interact with me. Some of you guys are going to want reference letters down the road. In office hours, I get to see you. I get to understand your interpersonal communication. I get to see your critical thinking, your creative thinking. And so when you're in office hours, you're giving, should you come and ask me for a letter of reference, I will have something to talk about if you show up and if you engage. And you don't have to, it's not about showing how bright you are all the time. It's about showing how engaged you are, really, that you're interested, that you want to be there, that you want to help your fellow peers, you want to learn from your fellow peers, you want to teach your fellow peers, you want to teach me. That's the kind of stuff that happens in office hours. So especially when we're so socially isolated, it's a great chance to get a social hit. So Mondays 3 to 4. Please know that you're always welcome. Here are the 3 TAs for the course. I put their addresses there for a few reasons, but the biggest one is you may come to know that some of these guys actually may offer lectures. We may swap out some of my lectures for lectures that they create instead, so that they can sort of try this online lecturing thing. So you may actually get to meet these people in that way. But know that they're also your TAs. And sometimes if there's ever anything in the course that you don't like, or that isn't making you comfortable, or you think should be done differently, sometimes the TAs are a more comfortable way to talk to me if you want to complain. So feel free to write to a TA and say, I didn't really want to say this to Professor Jordan straight out, but I'd like you to know that, a bunch of students are anxious about X or Y or Z. And is there any chance you could speak to him about clarifying that, for example? These are the sort of, think of them as a bridge between you and I. I hope you can come directly to me with things. I don't mind criticism at any point in time. But if you feel so, a little uncomfortable doing that, you can use the TAs to do that. They are a communication channel for you. They will be creating a lot of the questions that will be on your exams. They will be helping a lot with the activities, the 2 peer scholar assignments we have. Okay, let's go on through. I showed you the textbook, History of Psychology, 4th edition. If you connect with the bookstore resource, you can find options for getting a hard copy. You can also get a digital copy, which you can choose the length of time you want to rent it for, if you want to rent it. And so you can rent it, I think, for 4 months at a pretty good rate, if that's what you're looking for. Some students have told me that with a little bit of looking around, there's versions out there. I don't know if that's true or not. But nonetheless, that's the textbook we'll be using. It seems to be the best textbook I could find in terms of trying to give you an engaging journey through history, which is a hard thing to do. You'll find out, because you're going to have to do it, as you'll find out. Okay, so let's just move on. Lectures. So all the lectures are going to be online, and they're provided asynchronously. In fact, they are a voice from the past, which I mention now only, to make you understand why I look different now than I looked then, but also because I may occasionally make references to things that don't make sense to you. And so remember that I recorded those a year previous. And specifically, for example, when I taught this course before, I used to have quizzes every week, so-called M-tuners. I felt it was good to keep a bunch of low-stakes quizzes rather than higher-stakes exams. But we've been told at U of T that we should try to minimize how often we give you deadlines and give you assessments. That life is stressful right now, we're all stressful, so they said try to keep the course more simple. So we're going to more simple, and that will mean a midterm and a final, as you'll see. So I might allude to M-tuners or weekly quizzes or things like that, and if I do in these, just go, oh yeah, that was then, this is now. Okay, the syllabus tells you the rules of the game now. Okay, now I have all the lectures ready. I've released them all. They're all available to you now. And again, rather than doing like a 2-hour lecture a week, which is what I used to do in the classroom kind of context, instead I've done 3 to 6 shorter lectures for each week that probably roughly hit the 2-hour mark. They don't overdo that. So I was trying to be fair in terms of the time I expected from you guys. Okay, now, I do want to be clear that I do cover most of the textbook, but not all of it. There's more in there than I could possibly cover. You are responsible for all of the textbook. The TAs will create tests from the textbook. They don't really know what I'm teaching and what I'm not teaching, and so everything is fair game. So just keep that in mind when you're reading through. Okay. Now, here's the big change in the course, as I alluded to. Rather than weekly quizzes, we're going to have a midterm and a final and 2 assignments. The assignments are going to be weird. I like weird assignments. Sorry. I think you'll like them. One of them we've used before and students really liked it. The second one's brand new this year. I keep doing new things. Can't seem to help myself, but I look forward to where this is going. So let's go slow here. So first of all, there's going to be a midterm worth 30%. The midterm and the final will be purely multiple choice. For alternative, if you took my AO1 Intro Psych course, it'll be the same idea as what you got there. We're very careful about creating questions that are fair, and I can tell you what that means. I'll probably share with you, in fact, the guides that I give the TAs when they create questions. So you'll have the midterm worth 30, and eventually you see under there a final exam worth 45%. That leaves 25%, and that's going to come by way of 2 assignments, 2 activities that you'll do through the term. A peer scholar activity that will start around the 4th week of the summer term. And again, this is one of the things I owe you next week. By mid next week, I will have a section in there that describes these peer scholar activities in a lot of detail, including all the due dates and all that kind of stuff. But for now, just know the first one will be about the 4th week. The second one will start around the 8th week. First one with 10, second one with 15. I'm going to tell you more about them in a second. Each will, as I suggest here, require you to produce short audio casts related to historical figures. And then, of course, it's peer scholar, so you're going to provide feedback to peers and you're going to learn from feedback. That's my thing, right? I think that's very important for your development. So, of course, that's part of this course. All right. So, a couple of things. First of all, it is a history course. I used to think history was the most boring thing of all. Anyway. And then I went to Europe, where my family is from, and I spent some time there, like 4 months in Europe. And history's all around you in Europe. You literally can't walk down the street without tripping over a piece of interesting history. And so when you're there, you start to go, wow, this is kind of cool. You see it. You see its relevance more around you. I'm hoping to kind of bring you on that kind of journey here. I'm hoping to try to make this course as interesting as a history course can be. But it is what it is, and it is a challenge. It's a challenge for me to teach in an engaging way. It's a challenge for you to be engaged as you learn. But we will do our best, because, really understanding where these current practices, how we came to be the psychology we are, is really critical to being a good scholar. And we want you guys to be scholars of psychology. That's why this is a required course, or at least this or the theory. So you will learn, as I've highlighted earlier, that the way we do psychology today is one point in a constantly changing sort of function. And so you'll get a sense of that bigger picture, and that will really help you. Whatever you end up doing in psychology, so often we end up being specialists in specific areas, but it's really good to know how your area connects with the larger field. And that's what you're really going to get in this course. I mentioned some of the topics: the philosophical contributions from the ancients, the emergence of science itself during the Renaissance. We'll learn about some contributions from French, English, and German psychologists, although some of them were not psychologists at the time. Psychology didn't really happen until the end of the 19th century. So we're going to talk about these developments that kind of led to the birth of psychology. Of course, we'll talk about the founding of it, and then we'll just kind of go from there, right? And we'll talk about the evolution of psychology and how it's branched off into these various things, some of the theories of it, some of the schools of it, etc. Yeah, and of course, we'll talk about where we are now, with a hint of where we're going, what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know that for sure, but we have a sense of some of the directions. We'll talk about that. Okay, so that's the course. Now, I believe in giving you guys exercise in critical thought and creative thought and communication skills. And I do that often through my peer scholar activities. I really see them as chances to get you to work with the information you're learning and to learn it in a deeper and hopefully more interesting way. And so that's what my peer scholar activities are about. And there's 2 of them. They are supposed to give you a feeling of what it's like to be a historian, which is part of what I want you to understand in this course, because you're tempted to think of history as facts. But no, history is a story. Somebody got access to data and facts about somebody and something and whatever, and told a story. And that story is really critical. And you're going to learn that there's potential biases that can come into it, all sorts of things that we'll talk about. But you really understand that when you're the one telling the story. And so I want to put you in the shoes of a historian of psychology. And we're going to do that through 2 activities, okay? The first one is kind of a fun one. The second one's one that could have an impact. Okay, so let's just talk through these. I'm going to talk through them in a general sense now. And again, by mid next week, I'll have very specific information about each of them. So, Peer Scholar 1, your chance to be a star, baby. I want you to learn about some of this one's going to be about the figures, the important people of psychology, and you'll see the other one's going to be about the schools of psychology, but this one's about the people. And I wanted you, how could I get you to kind of learn about some of these figures in a way you would find enjoyable? And this is what I came up with. And students, we have used this one in the past, and students really liked it, which is why I'm bringing it back. So here's my setup for you. Imagine a movie producer approaches you and says, hey, I'm creating this new blockbuster movie, and it's going to be really, really cool. And you know what it is? It's got a time machine in it, and we're bringing back historical figures. In fact, historical figures from psychology. We're bringing them from the past to the present, right in the middle of the COVID pandemic. And we're going to benefit from their wisdom. That's why we're bringing them back. So we're going to bring them back in this time machine to where we are now. I shouldn't say bring them back. I should say bring them forward, right? To where we are now. And we're interested in their thoughts about the pandemic. So we'll tell them about the pandemic, we'll give them exposure to the full news, and we'll say, okay, each one of these now will tell us what they think about it. Okay, so you are going to get to try out for this movie. You are going to get to pick one of these people from psychology as the person you would like to play in a movie. And don't worry about gender or anything like that. You are you. You can be whoever you want to be in this course. Role playing is perfectly fine. So I'll show you in a moment the 16 figures that we're talking about, but you will get to pick one, not necessarily the one you want. I'll explain when we come there, but you'll get to pick one. And the first part of this is for you to create a 3-minute audio clip in that character speaking as that figure would about some aspect of the pandemic. So just to be a little more clear, let's say you're Pavlov, Ivan Pavlov, founder of classical conditioning. You're told about the pandemic. Well, when Pavlov's looking at the pandemic, he's probably worried about the learning that's happening, the conditioning that's happening. How are people forming associations between various things? And what will that lead them? How will that change their behavior, right? He was really interested in that. And so, this is the tricky part. If you really understand Pavlov, and then you think about the pandemic, this is where I want you to be creative. This is where I want you to think of something. Oh, I think Pavlov would find it really interesting. I don't know. Anti-maskers. I don't know why he would. I think anti-maskers would be fascinating for Pavlov, and this is what he would have to say about them. And so that's the idea, and you only have 3 minutes, and you're going to be Pavlov, and you're going to record yourself, just your voice, talking for 3 minutes as though you were Pavlov, talking about some issue. And as you do that, your task is to try to bring Pavlov to life, to try to show that you understand him and his contribution enough to apply it to this pandemic situation. Okay? Kind of fun, right? That'll be step 1. Step 2 is you're then going to come back into Peer Scholar and you're going to see those clips submitted by 5 of your peers. And let me just back up for a second and say there's a new platform called Treble. It's kind of like YouTube, but it's just for audio clips, and they only allow them to be 3 minutes or less. And we're going to work with the Treble people. They have a suite of tools that you can use to create these audio clips. And so part of what we're going to do is learn all about that as we go. We're going to have the person in from Treble that will show you what you can do. And that's going to be the sort of, rather than having you do written assignments in this course, I'm going to have you create these short audio clips. A little more fun for you, a little different, I think, and especially for the next activity, you'll see there's a reason. Okay, so sorry, I just wanted to back up to that. So you did your thing as your figure, and you said, this is what I think of the pandemic. That was your first step. Now, in the second step, you're going to log back in, and you're going to see what 5 of your peers submitted. And so you're going to listen to them. You won't see them. You'll listen to them presenting, some issue from the pandemic as a historical figure. And you are still you. And by you, I don't mean you. I mean, in this case, Pavlov, if we're carrying through the example. So you are supposed to read what, I don't know, pick your other person. Brenda Milner will have talked about COVID, and you are reading what Brenda said as Pavlov. And you are going to respond to Brenda, almost like you're now having a correspondence, a set of letters. They used to do this a lot in the history of psychology. So let's say you saw what Brenda said in the media. And now your job is to respond as Ivan Pavlov to her in some way, either agreeing with what she said and maybe adding some more details, or perhaps disagreeing if your perspective is different than hers. And again, what you want to try to do for each of these 5 is represent Pavlov, right? You want to try to show you understand the character you are playing, but you also want to show you understand those characters. So if we take the director point of view, he will say, you know what, these characters are going to talk to each other in my movie as well. So I want to see how you would talk to Brenda Milner. And we're going to assume you know who she is and what she's done. You are colleagues in science, even if you existed at different times, that doesn't matter. And so you were going to speak to her in a knowledgeable way, as though you know about her contributions, you know about what area of psychology she's in, and you're going to try to bridge that distance as 2 different historical figures. Okay, this is more about making you think creatively, making you really try to think about these characters and these interactions. It's not about, I will have a grading key for you. I'll show you how the TAs will grade all this, but we're not going to grade it tough. We're not looking to bring you down here. We're looking to give you a really good learning experience where you can have fun kind of taking what you know about these characters and using it in a fun kind of context. Okay, so finally in the reflect phase, while you were responding to five other character submissions, 5 were also responding to you. And so you are going to, they said something to you, and you're going to say something back. So again, this is kind of like these letters. We're going back and forth between scientists, historical figures. It'll be fun. There's not really a way to do it wrong. Well, there is. The only way to do it wrong is to not show any understanding of who you are or who those characters are. If you don't seem to know them at all and you can't find any touch points between the 2 of them, that's sort of what the TAs are looking for. They're just going to look to see, do you seem to know your character well? And do you seem to know these characters you're interacting with well? And notice you could interact with up to 10 other characters, right? So this is going to push you to kind of look into each of those characters a little bit more, learn them a little bit more, and that's the idea of this activity, okay? To do that in a fun way. Yeah. That's going to be the first activity. This sort of movie, bringing characters from the past, having them reflect on a pandemic issue, which then kicks off a back and forth of letters. Cool, interesting, different, weird, all of the above. Well, I hope so. I hope the cool fits. Again, students from the past really like this one. All right, cool. That will be the one we do around the 4th week. And then we're going to do another one starting around the 8th week and really going right to the end of the term. And let me preface this with the following. You guys know I'm an education geek, and then I spent a lot of time on the research and what makes education powerful, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that they highlight is something called authentic learning. And what authentic learning means is it's hard. Let me give you the bad example first. If you ask a student to do something, an essay, whatever it is, but that student knows that all you're going to do is look at it, put a grade on it, and then essentially throw it in the waste paper basket. They are just going through an exercise of producing something so that you can grade them. When that's the case, it's hard to get all that excited about what you're doing, right? You're just whatever. But instead, if we ask you to do something where what you produce may have value that lives on after it was graded, it may actually go out and have an impact in some way. When you do that, students find it's a very different story. It's much more interesting. It's suddenly relevant, and there's a bit of a challenge. There's a desire to have your work matter. And so that's what I'm going to try to create in this next one, is one of these authentic learning experiences. It's sort of a work-integrated learning because you're going to learn a little bit about a context outside the university as well. And I think you'll find it really interesting. So this is how it's going to work. there is a museum of the history of psychology. We're going to meet some people from the museum as we go, which is kind of interesting, and we're going to try to give them something useful. Not just them, but also Treble, that company I told you about. We're going to try to give them both something useful. That's why they're helping us. It's going to be a little bit of a trade of a sort. Okay? So we're going to get to know this museum person. She's already offered to give us a tour, a virtual tour of the museum. So that would be kind of cool. But yeah, they'd like our help. Their mission is to make the general public more aware of the history of psychology. And I think you can help. And so here's what we're going to do. So here's the first part you won't like. You will work as groups of 4. I know students, group work, I hate group work, I hate group work. I know. But there is nothing. Maybe there's something. There's almost nothing of value created or accomplished in this life by single individuals. Almost everything of value that is produced by a group of individuals working together. Therefore, we should be preparing you for this, right? It's not always fun to work with a group of other individuals. It's no more fun outside of the university setting than within, but it's considered absolutely critical outside of the university setting. You always work in groups. And so if you're going to be prepared for that, you need to practice it here. Now, in the real world, groups tend to work a little better. They do work a little better because there is a commitment from everybody. You know, they're all employed by some organization. They want to stay employed. And so they're more willing to sort of pull their weight and contribute. And I will do what I can, and I'll tell you about some of those things, to bring that into this group activity as well. Because what I'd really like you to experience is well, I don't know. Let me say this 2 ways. In a way, what I'd love you to experience is a group that just worked really well together. All got along, all helped each other, and worked really, really good. However, you may not experience that. And part of group work and what you learn in group work is also negotiating the skills of dealing with people who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? How do you interact when there's somebody in your group that's not pulling their weight? Those sort of problems and solving those sorts of problems are part of the group work situation. By the way, myself and the TAs will be around. So if you're having any issues with your group, we got your back, so to speak. And we want to do everything we can to help you negotiate those challenges and have a powerful group work experience. But okay, be that as it may, let me continue the story a little bit. You're going to work as a group, 4 people. Again, details about how you join those groups and how it'll work will follow mid next week. We have 6 different areas of psychology here. The biological neuroscience area, developmental psychology, behavioral, cognitive, social, and clinical. And your group is going to be able to choose one of these areas. I need a certain number of groups in every area, so there will only be so many groups that get into each area. I have a fair way of deciding who gets into what. I'll tell you about that as we go. But for now, just know that there's 6 areas, and what your group is going to do is pick one of these areas. Let's say you got social psychology, and your group is going to tell the history of social psychology in 7 3-minute audio clips. That Treble company likes what they call journeys. And journeys are collections of 3-minute clips. And what they actually do, just so you have a sense, if you were a Treble person, you can create a playlist of sources that you like. And every morning, it will download onto your playlist the 3-minute videos those sources produced. So we could become a source somebody likes. Okay, and every morning they get the next video, the next 3-minute video of the social psychology. Let's call it course, but they call it journey. And so every day this person can listen to just 3 minutes and learn the next little story about social psychology. Okay, Now, of course, we're going to have 6 of these. So they could do a week of social psychology, then they could move to clinical, then they could move to cognitive, then they could move to behavioral. We're going to create 6 journeys, okay? But you are going to focus on one of these areas, and you with 3 other people are going to you're going to figure out how to tell the story of that area. This is where I want you to be the historian. How do you tell the story of social psychology in 7 3-minute audio clips? I want you to struggle with that. I want you to kind of think, well, what are the things we want to talk about? Here are all the things we could talk about. We've only got this much time. What are we going to pick? What's the order? How are we going to connect them all together? It's a very creative process. It should be a really fun process. And ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to have, I figure, about 4 or 5 groups create journeys in each area. So yes, your group will create a social psychology journey, but perhaps 4 others will as well. So that once you create the journey, that's step 1, that'll be your create phase, 7 audio clips, and you'll submit those as your group work. You will then, as individuals now, see the work submitted by those other groups, those other if you're in social psychology, you'll see the other, let's say 3 social psychology journeys. And I'm going to ask you to assess each one of those, to listen to those journeys, and to apply a rubric to it, and I'll give you this rubric ahead of time, that will basically say how good of a journey is it. And based on your assessments for each area, we're going to pick the 2 best. Okay, what were the 2 best social psychology journeys and the 2 best clinical psychology journeys as you guys believe, because you guys are going to be the ones that are going to ultimately figure out who the bests are. And then once we have those, we're going to, I think I've gotten ahead a little bit. Yeah, the TAs will also assess the journeys. And they're also going to assess the quality. Sorry, I didn't talk about the feedback. Let me go a little slower. I'm getting a little excited about this. It's complicated, but it'll be clear as we go. So you're going to submit your 7 audio files in the create phase. And then during assess, you as individuals now will assess and provide feedback to the other groups who did the same area as you. In the reflect phase, you're going to see the feedback that was given to your group's work, and you're going to be asked some questions about it. That's just to encourage you to read it. Thank you. Cheers. I'm lucky to have tea delivered at this time of day. All right. Right. The TAs are also going to assess the journeys, and they're also going to assess the quality of the feedback that you gave. And I'm going to have a rubric that really specifies what should a good journey look like. And you'll have this rubric ahead of time to help you when you create your own, and that's what we use to score each other. Okay. All right. So that's the actual sort of formal class part of the project. But here's the next part. We're going to identify those 2 best journeys within each of the 6 areas. And those go to the people you'll meet from the Museum of the History of Psychology. They are going to look at all 12 of these, and within each, they are going to pick the best. Great. So there's 2 social psychology. They're going to listen to both of those, and they're going to say, we like number 1 better. And so they're going to pick the best in those 6 areas. And that's your goal, I hope, is that your journey is one of those best, because those winning journeys, those 6 journeys, will then be featured on treble.com. They will be released to the public and sort of highlighted in a way that says, hey, this is something you should check out. I had a treble thing here. Yeah, of course. These ones, I think. Yeah, so this is a sense. So this specific one is about a mindfulness podcast, but this one, every day, a new audio thing is released on this topic. So there would be a page like this for the history of psychology. And every day, for a week, they'll learn about one area. And then for the next week, about another. So for 6 weeks, people can go through and listen to these winning journeys. So that's the kind of cool prize. That's the potential prize. Your work, what you do, could ultimately teach a lot of the general public about the history of psychology. You will be a historian of psychology, contributing and doing your part. That's kind of cool, isn't it? Okay. So, two complicated things, right? This is just me. A, these historical figures talking to each other, and then B, creating these journeys where you yourself have to take what you've learned and translate it into these auditory journeys. Both meant to deepen your understanding of the course in what I hope is a sort of fun, interesting way. Okay. Each of those, I'll give you fully detailed things, and I'll probably create videos on each of them as well. I'll really walk you through them. Okay. So that just brings us to sort of where we are. I've already said of this midterm, final, with those 2 peer scholar activities along the way. And just in terms of learning outcomes, this is what I hope you will gain from this course, a much clearer understanding of how the psychology we practice now came to be how it is, a strong sense of the individuals that have shaped psychology, the roles they've played, the questions they focused on, the impact they had, a strong appreciation how the scientific approach has kind of moved psychological knowledge in a way that wouldn't be possible otherwise. How that approach came to be, and the parts of psychology that don't use it, that are different. So you'll learn a bit of that. I say here, practice writing and debating professionally in ways that are context appropriate while being clear and effective. So this is left over from the past. I should have changed this, because you're not going to do that much writing in this course. You're going to be creating these audio files, but same idea, that really will exercise your critical thought, your creative thought, your communication skills, which I like that. And of course, within Peer Scholar, we're continually going to push you to think critically and creatively and communicate with each other. And so you're going to practice all of those skills, which is a big part of what I do. All right. There's other things in this syllabus that's in all of your syllabi. So I tell you to take a look at these. These are all the official departmental stuff that we have to include with every syllabus. So check that out as well. But it's the previous stuff here that's most important. Alrighty. So welcome. Here's the course. I hope you like it. I think we're going to have a lot of fun together. I guess I will probably have an office hour. Well, I already have an office hour Monday. Probably not next Monday. Let's start those up the following Monday. And you'll see those on Collaborate being populated. But once you've had the time to read a little and get into it, we'll start the office hours. Okay, cool. I will see you then, I hope, in office hours. Till then, start reading, start watching lectures, and more information coming, as I said, mid next week about those 2 Peer Scholar activities and just sort of the dates of everything as they come together. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.